Hello, and welcome to this week's study on our section in Luke. We're in Luke chapter 15, and this is a section that has three parables to be exact, about being lost. And I don't know if you've ever been lost before. I've never been just, I don't know, deeply lost. I've been, probably the worst I've been is I was younger and we were in Cool Springs Mall toward Franklin, and I was with my family, and my brother and my parents were together, or we were all together, and they went to a different store, and I didn't know that they went to a different store, and I was just minding my own business, shopping around wherever we were, and I looked around and could not find my parents or my brother, and I was very scared. It was not fun. I don't remember how old I was. Uh, I'm going to say a pretty young age, just for the sake of embarrassment, because I don't want it to be truthfully. I was like 13, crying because I couldn't find my parents. That is not the case. I can promise you that, or at least I hope. But I was pretty young, and I just remember being filled with fear and anxiety and just scared because I was in a place away from my family. I don't know if you've ever been lost before, if you've ever felt that feeling of being away from your family, but that's a theme that keeps coming up in this chapter. And so in Luke chapter 15, we get three parables: parable of the lost sheep, parable of the lost coin, and parable of the lost son. And these, if you've been around Christian, if you've been a Christian for a while, if you've been around the church for a while, you've probably heard these parables a lot. So I'm going to try to kind of hit the main point I think all this is getting at. And hopefully you have read through this chapter. If you haven't already, maybe take some time to do that, because I won't be touching on a lot of that. But it's a really good chapter with a lot of good stuff. And even if we are familiar with it, go back again and read it and be able to hopefully draw new things out from the text. But I have this painting on the screen for a reason. This is a painting by a guy named Rembrandt from a really long time ago. I don't exactly know when, but this is his portrayal of the story of the prodigal son. And as you can see in the painting, well, I'll get to some of that later, but the painting in itself, he draws attention to what he thinks are two of the biggest points of all these stories. And that's a story of compassion and a story of resentment. The compassion shown in the embrace of the father, and the resentment felt by the older brother who is on the right side in the red cloak watching. And so I think that's kind of the tension that's drawn throughout this whole chapter, is this tension and stories about compassion and resentment. And so, but how do we get there? How do we get to the prodigal son? First, we need to ask the question, okay, why were these three parables even told? What's the point of telling these three parables? And I think verse 1 and verse 2 kind of answer that question for us. So Luke chapter 15, verse 1. Now tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to him. Two groups that were not looked on very highly by really anybody. Tax collectors were deeply tied to the Roman government and were taking everybody's money that they did not enjoy. And sinners were looked on very poorly by society, and also, of course, by the scribes and Pharisees, the religious leaders at the time. And so they really tried to distance themselves from both of these groups, especially the sinners. So, but all these people are drawing near to Jesus. That's a big point. And so the Pharisees and the scribes see this, and they grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them. Why would he do that? Why would he spend time with tax collectors and sinners? Not just that. Why would he do that? But it's wrong that Jesus should do this. Why is he spending time becoming unclean around all these unclean people? And so that's the kickoff to the rest of this chapter. Why is Jesus doing this? Why is he even taking the time to do this? And so he tells them a parable. First one of a lost sheep. Why wouldn't or who wouldn't rejoice at such a wonderful thing, right? That's kind of the emphasis of this story of the lost sheep. This guy has lost one of his sheep. He goes, finds it, and rejoices deeply. Who wouldn't do that, right? That's kind of the question. Of course, we would rejoice when something of ours goes away and it is brought back. And then it goes again to the parable of the lost coin, kind of reiterating the same point of who wouldn't rejoice, but also a little deeper. Not only is there great rejoicing, but this woman flips over her whole house, does all she can to try to find that lost coin. It's not that it's just good that she gets the coin back, but she does all that she can to get that coin back. And I think this is kind of what Jesus is trying to say with all these parables, because then we get a parable of a lost son who goes away. Jesus is reiterating the point of, this is what I'm here for. I'm here for the lost in the first parable. I'm here for the lost in the second parable. And I'm here for the lost in the third parable. That's what my mission is about. And he drives that in with 3 parables that emphasize that point. And probably the most famous is the last one, the parable of the prodigal son. This is Rembrandt's portrayal, like I said. Of course, it's not an exact portrayal. He's not trying to say this is how it happened, but he's trying to send you a message through the painting, I think. Maybe he's not, but I think there can be one drawing. So this is his portrayal of the parable of the prodigal son. And what's interesting about this painting, or there's a lot of interesting things about it, but and you can't like super tell this because the lighting on this picture isn't great. It kind of makes everything really bright, but really light is being shined on the father and the son in the embrace, but also on the face of the older brother. The other 2 characters, and there's another character in the back. That's why I don't like it, because you can't really see. There's another guy way back there, but they're in the backgrounds. You can see them, but there isn't light being shown on them. The attention is drawing your attention to these 3 characters, and kind of different from normal paintings is it's not just trying to attach your attention to one main point. It's not all about the father and the son, but it's also about the older brother. Light's being shed. The light is being split between these 3 characters and between these 2 points in the story. And that's on purpose, because the parable is split as well. If you read through the parable, it kind of goes through the story of the son pretty fast. It moves pretty quickly through him getting his inheritance, leaving his father, realizing he needs to coming back, and the father embracing him. All that's deeply important, but he moves through it kind of quickly. And he really slows down in verse 25 when it gets to the older brother, because that's an important part of the story too. And so, first thing to notice is the embrace of the son and the father. The red cloaks show their prominence. That's how you know this is the father and that's the older brother. They're both clothed in these red cloaks, showing their prominence. But yet the son is stripped of everything that would tie him to the father. You wouldn't be able to look at him and realize by anything that the prodigal son, that the lost son is wearing or has. You wouldn't be able to tell that he had any connection with the father. And so why is the father embracing him, hugging him, and not just hugging him, but the compassion that's shown by the father, his face and his stance, a very humble and welcoming stance that he embraces his son with. All that's very intentional, I think, to show the compassion and the readiness to embrace all those who come to the Father. Very important part of the prodigal son. But second is the son in the shadows. Yes, the son was in the field when all this was happening. So in the parable, he doesn't actually see his brother embrace the father. But Rembrandt pictured it this way for a reason. Because when the older son does hear about all this, what does he do? What would you expect him to do? To rejoice, right? And say, yes, my son is back. Or my brother is back. At least from the last two parables, that's what you would think he would say, right? What should his reaction would be? Something is lost, it is returned. Based on the last two parables, he should be glad. He should be rejoicing, excited that his brother has come back. But of course, that's not the picture we get. He's filled with anger and jealousy. He says, look, these many years I've served you and never disobeyed your commandments. You never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours has come, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf for him. He's just filled with all this anger and resentment. Where was that for me? He says, what? It's almost like he's saying, I've served you like a slave. That's kind of his picture of it. I've just been in your service this whole time, and you've done nothing for me. What a bad reaction and thought process. But we actually studied this in the youth group a couple of weeks ago. Well, like a couple months ago. And we kind of came to the conclusion that, yeah, I think a lot of times we're more like the elder brother in the story than we are the prodigal son, or which we sometimes like to think of ourselves, right? We want to be the one who, even though has done some past, is beautifully embraced into the Father's presence, and sometimes we are. But there's also a lot of us, or at least that's what we kind of came to, and what I've come to for myself. There's a lot of the older brother in me, which I do not enjoy. Right? There's a piece of me that wants stuff for myself, that wants the blessings of being in Christ and being in Christianity for myself. Maybe you see somebody gaining a lot of popularity or a lot of money or all these different things, right? And you say, where is that for me, right? Where can I get that? And so often that can show up in my life of anger and jealousy and resentment. But I think this parable speaks to that in a way and says you need to realize that, one, but also ask yourself, okay, what are you going to do when that happens? And we're not told in the rest of the story how the older brother reacts. And even Rembrandt in his painting here leaves the elder brother stuck between the light and the embrace of the Father and the darkness and the shadows. You can see the front half of him is filled with light, but the back half is just completely dark. You can't even see the back half of him. And that's because he's trying to say that the elder brother in this painting and in the parable are at this decision point. Okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to rejoice and embrace this son like I have? Or are you going to keep slipping into that anger and that darkness that you can feel creeping up? Which way are you going to go? And And we have to ask ourselves that same question, I think, when those feelings of anger, resentment, jealousy start creeping in our lives. And so that's what I think the parable of the prodigal son highlights. These three important things. Of course, the heart of the brother. Okay, where is my heart in all this? In life in general, when anger and jealousy can kind of creep in, but also when it comes to discipleship and reaching out and ministering. Do I truly have a heart for reaching out to the people around me and pointing them to the Father? Where's my heart in all this? The path of the Son. And no matter how far away the Son gets, wherever the Son finds himself, he realizes there is a path back to the Father. And I think that's something that we need to always keep in mind, especially if you're considering Christianity for the first time or kind of on the fence, is we serve a God who gives us a path to Him if we turn to Him and seek Him. And then, of course, that goes to the love of the Father that is continually portrayed in this story, in this painting as well, that the love the Father has for His Son. And that's something I think that comes out very heavy in this parable, is the love and compassion that the Father has. And so that's Luke chapter 15. Next week, I think we'll be doing Luke 16 with Steve, so take a chance to read that if you can. And we will see you next week, if I can figure out how to stop this thing. Have a great week.